Do you live in a world filled with corporate data? Are you plagued by siloed departments? Are your lackluster growth strategies demolishing your chances for success? Are you held captive by the evil menace, Lord Lack? Lack of time, lack of strategy, and lack of the most important and powerful tool in your superhero tool belt, knowledge. Never fear, HubHeroes. Get ready to don your cape and mask, move into action, and become the Hub Hero your organization needs. Tune in each week to join the League of Extraordinary Inbound Heroes as we help you educate, empower, and execute. HubHeroes, it's time to unite and activate your powers.
I feel so activated right now, dude.
I know, and educated.
Me too.
I'm educated.
Yeah.
Hibernated for a long weekend.
Together.
Oh, hibernated, acticated. Wow.
Dude, you know what I got into?
Uh-oh.
Last week?
Is this, first of all, is this G-rated, PG-rated?
Adjudicated is a legal term.
Sure.
No, I mean, Max said, do you know what I got into, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So I was asking, is that PG or G-rated?
It's rated.
Oh.
Oh.
It's rated a level.
Sure.
That
It's
is
rated
an
M for
answer.
Max.
Thank you, Max.
It is.
Mm-hmm. It's an answer.
What'd you get into?
I'm getting into a little bit of game dev.
Oh.
Nice.
I'm learning a platform called Godot.
Wait.
Godot.
What's it called?
Godot. It's French.
God bless
It's
you.
Godot.
Oh.
Godot.
Yeah.
Godot.
Yeah. I got some tissues for that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I haven't learned how to make tissues yet, but I did make a table and boxes.
Oh, nice.
And I put the box on the table.
So is this like kind of
it's not
like
that
a is it like really high definition or is it more like the 8-pixel type game?
It's 3D.
Oh, 3D.
It's
oh.
3D.
Wow.
Ooh.
I made some low poly textures, if that's what you're asking me.
Wow.
I do be up in that block
Absolutely.
bench.
That
You know
was
what I mean?
just
Painting
right on
some
the tip of my
pixels.
tongue right there.
16 bits.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure how this relates to sandboxes in HubSpot at all, but hey.
Because it's like I'm playing in a
the
sandbox.
box.
Oh,
Yeah.
the sandbox. You made
I
boxes
did.
And he made a
for
box.
the table.
I
Well, it's like I
absolutely
got my
no
own virtual
sandboxing
sandbox
this
I'm playing
weekend.
in, is what I'm saying.
Wow.
You did some
I did
real
absolutely
sandboxing?
no sandboxing. No sandboxing this weekend. I have been binge watching Game of Thrones, and I had a really good omelet.
Oh.
So I'm looking to get my fill of sandboxes
Wow.
this morning. So, George,
Wow.
I
Sounds
actually want to
exquisite.
tee you up for today's conversation if we're ready to dig into it. So,
Yeah.
you got a ping from one of our favorite friends of the pod, Chris Carolan, who was asking
Yep.
for this episode. Talk to me about what he was asking for.
We were talking about customer platform updates, and I do believe that we ran across a product update that is the new standard sandbox with improved production, metadata, and deploy to production supported assets. That is the longest name of an update
Mouthful.
ever to a HubSpot product. But we were going over that, and Chris referenced like, hey, you know, it'd be great to have Chad. He literally named Chad wax nerdy because Chris really loves when Chad wax nerdy on things on the show. We should see if Chad can wax nerdy and Max can wax nerdy on sandboxes, and I think that would be a useful episode. I said, Chris, I think you're right, because you know one thing that I don't do a lot of in HubSpot over the last eons since I'm the grandpa of inbound and grandpa of HubSpot, sandboxes. Like most of my clients are small to medium sized businesses. They have like marketing or sales pro or less. And so, which by the way, we'll get to why that's important, to why I don't really do sandboxes a lot. And so here we are, we're having an episode. We're talking about sandboxes. If you've ever been curious, if you should have a sandbox environment, what a sandbox environment is, maybe some of the cool things that Chad or Max have done with sandboxes, well then buckle up because we're playing in the sand today. Now also my beginning joke might make a little more sense, or us rambling about boxes might make a little more sense too.
We got there. We got
there, guys. We got there. No, I personally am excited about this episode because again, I play in very specific parts of HubSpot, and I don't often get to learn or hear about these more technical areas. So let's start with that kind of obvious question, right? Like, I've heard of sandbox environments in HubSpot. Sandbox environments are not necessarily a new HubSpot specific concept. But when we're talking about HubSpot Sandbox for today's conversation, what specifically are we talking about? Take the nerd and make it user accessible. What are we talking about?
So, like, imagine if you could take your HubSpot account and duplicate it so you could go play with it and test stuff without breaking the real stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Before Chad goes, I'll be completely honest with everybody listening to this. I took this conversation and these questions to my clone. And I asked my clone, what the heck is a HubSpot Sandbox? And my clone said, the HubSpot Sandbox is like your personal testing laboratory. Max, that's literally what you just said. Inside of HubSpot, it's a safe, isolated environment where you can experiment, test, and refine changes without messing up your live customer-facing data. Think of it as I love this part, by the way. Think of it as a practice field. One of the things we love to do is we can go down to South Carolina and we can watch the Panthers practice before they actually hit the big. So it says, think of it as a practice field where you can try out new plays before taking them to the big game. I was like, that's a pretty cool overview. That's a cool overview. Chad, where does your brain go?
Yeah, well, just in general, like to break it down, when it comes to development as a whole, like if you're going to be developing anything, which let's be real, like why, people may call, oh, hey, we're CRM super admins or whatever. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're developing some sort of process or some sort of new thing for somebody to use a lot of times when you're adding any kind of functionality or feature to HubSpot. Just in general software development, typically you want to have a few environments, actually. You want to have a production environment, you want to have a test environment, and you want to have a dev environment for the developers to go play around in. Now, I used to work at a company. We used to call our dev environment the trash can. And then when we'd want to go in and do this little bit of testing on a new build, they'd be like, yeah, get out of my trash can.
That's funny.
I'd want to go in early to see new features before they were ready. Like, get out of my trash can. It's not working, And then they'd push it up to test once it was ready for somebody to make sure that it's not really going to mess up everybody's world. Right.
Yeah.
Now, we don't have that here in HubSpot Sandbox. We have two separate isolated environments, but what we do have is the ability to duplicate that live environment into what I would probably call a test environment, right?
Yeah. And I think also it's important to kind of explain the difference between this and other ways that you can just kind of play around with stuff. So if you just want to, if you're someone who just wants to futz around with HubSpot, you can go create a developer account and create what's called a test account, which is essentially a blank slate, everything enterprise HubSpot account. The only difference is you can't send emails to people, right? So it renders it functionally useless for anyone who wants to do anything real with it. Yeah. So that's a developer sandbox a test portal. We don't want to call those sandboxes. Sandbox specifically, the big difference is that it's going to duplicate the way that your portal's already set up. So imagine your layouts, your records, your custom objects, your properties, and then you could even bring in, I think, what is it now? 5,000 of your most recent records or something,
and their associated objects or something like that.
Exactly. And you can bring those in. So you can play with real data, right? Which is great, but you're not going to screw up the original stuff. So this is really, really good if you want to test a new workflow that you build so you can see how it interacts with stuff. Or if you want to if you're doing any sort of big data restructuring exercise, right? This is a great place to do it because you can kind of see how it'll all work without messing up your data structure in your regular portal, right? So there's a million reasons why you might want to use the sandbox.
And I think too,
George, I have a clarifying question. Oh yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So let me jump in for 1 second because one of the things too is because Max, you did say development sandbox, and then also what you guys kind of backed up and then alluded to was a standard sandbox. And like right now, if you, and it may be because I have this beta on, or it may have been that way historically. Again, remember, I don't do a lot with sandboxes, but I just want everybody to know the experience now. If you go in and you create a new sandbox, you actually have the ability to pick one or the other. You can pick a standard sandbox, which again is kind of that extensive copy of production idea for like the robust testing. It's the 5,000 contacts, the production objects, the forms, the workflows, the emails, all of that. Or there is the development sandbox, which is like a minimal copy of production for like rapid testing. So this is like when you're going to just test proof concepts, test proof custom cards, things like that. Go ahead, Max.
But let me clarify something. I was referring to developer test accounts, which are a separate idea.
Okay.
So like, but that's a good distinction too, right? In when you make when you have an enterprise HubSpot account, you can make a sandbox and either have it be a standard or a developer sandbox. And like a developer sandbox is great if you're trying to like test an integration or some APIs or some like whatever stuff that you're trying to
you're trying to build a UIE, right?
Yep. Something like that. Yeah. Some sort of extension, right? But you have to have an enterprise account in order to build those. A developer test account, any random Joe Schmo can go get a HubSpot developer account and spin up test portals.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So like bucket that outside of this conversation for anybody listening, right? Like I know there's like a lot of people like, oh, I don't have enterprise. I can't do a sandbox. Nothing's stopping you from going and building like proof of concept stuff in a developer test account.
100%.
Literally nothing. Right.
Yep.
It just won't copy anything from your portal because it's a disconnected idea completely from like, being related to your portal in any way, shape or form.
One thing I want to double click on before I then shut up and let Liz continue us down the path that we're supposed to go down, because I find this very interesting. As somebody who has been helping train humans in HubSpot for years and know that there are portals that have like test training for like forms and this, that, and the other thing that have to like go back and clean up. If you have the enterprise version and can do a sandbox, one of the things that they have as a bullet point is like train new users and explore features and tools. In other words, it could become the trash can of training. Like you could have do a development sandbox, but it be your training sandbox, where that's where you go and just train people in, and all the stuff could be littered around it and it not impact like your actual HubSpot portal where you're day in, day out. And people are like, why is this test training workflow in here? Anyway, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
So I only had one clarifying question before we moved on, because George, you and I have done a lot of work together in HubSpot. Is the sandbox environment we're talking about different from content staging?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
So completely different, because content staging is part of like CMS, or what is now Content Hub. And so if you want to deploy website pages, landing pages, but be able to work on pages that are already live, make adjustments without anybody seeing them, but be able to have internal teams preview them and then push those pages live to like the same URL. That's what content staging is for. Very, very much just like content driven. By the way, if not why we're here, but I wish you could actually do content stage blogs. But again, totally different conversation. HubSpot development team. Hopefully you're listening to this, or somebody that knows the development team. Who knows? Maybe your mom's listening to this and they'll pass it on to you. But completely different than like a sandbox environment.
Hi, Mom.
That's like the content sandbox, basically.
Yeah,
in a way.
But I love
it's like
staging.
Content test, probably.
Yeah,
but or pre-prod, maybe you would call it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right. So let's throw this out there, guys. What has changed with HubSpot Sandbox that we're excited about? What's the 411? What's the scoop?
Well, so they had legacy sandbox before, right? And that's what they're called now. So if you have an older style sandbox, it's referred to now as a legacy sandbox. And then they have a new version of the standard sandbox, which essentially does a one-time import of your current HubSpot account. But there is a bit of a distinction between the old and the new, right? The old sandbox, it could continually get refreshed, like the legacy one, where you could update it with whatever the current structure of your current production portal is now. That feature has not been added to the new standard Sandbox, but they added a big one that people have been wanting for a long time. And this is killer for anybody who is a standard, like is managing one portal. Like if you're a HubSpot super admin of one portal, this is like pretty epic because you don't have to pay for extra tools to solve some of these problems. And what it allows you to do is basically reverse sync, or they call it a deploy to production from your Sandbox. And it supports like 5 things right now. Right now, it supports the ability to like basically clone your portal, add forms, lists, marketing emails, objects and property structures, and then workflows that involve any of those things. I don't know for certain, though. I don't believe it'll pull up any workflow. Like if you put custom code in the workflow, it might not pull it over. Or if you put, so there's a couple things that it still won't do as far as reverse sync. And those are the main things that are supported. But when you're talking about like, okay, well, what I'm going to do is create an integration, like, or add a new feature, right? Like I was working with a company and we added a contract management system, Rad AI. And so we were doing this contract management system and I was able to install the integration, add additional properties, test the whole thing in Sandbox, and push all of those property changes back up to production, right? And all of there was no new objects, but if there was a new object, it would do it property groups. It didn't manipulate the user interface, unfortunately. So that's also something that it still doesn't do. But and we can maybe double click on that later when we're going into some more of Liz's questions. But it's amazing now that at least at minimum you have a baseline. And this is the worst this feature is ever going to be, as we often say, right? Yeah. And they're only going to be adding more, and they're looking for feedback on, what's missing, right? Well, what's missing is, for me, user interface, right? Update the user interface along with it, because often you want to build a good user experience, not just, I'm going to put the bits and bobs in the back end and then they'll all figure it out in production. You're going to have to redo whatever you did over in Sandbox in production, right?
And also like a little bit of historical context here too. Like Sandboxes have been around for a while, but they've never had the ability to push stuff back into the main production portal, right? Yeah.
And so that's what a lot of big enterprise CRMs often have. Like, if you get Dynamics 365, I mean, you have because it's made by Microsoft, right? So they have like 3 layers. Like you could do the whole dev test prod thing that I described basically in Dynamics, but also Dynamics is a giant beast of a system that's like, basically you have to be a developer to use it.
Yeah. Now, something important to note, as of the day we're recording, this is August 18th, or no, not 18th, 11th.
The 11th, man. Don't do that to us. Come on.
I don't know why I did that.
Sheesh.
It's August 11th, right? The way the deploy to production stuff is in beta, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the limitations around it are that you can only deploy back net new stuff you've created. It doesn't let you edit existing assets, which is a little bit goofy, but again, worst it's ever going to be right now.
Yeah.
Right. And the logical first step to any of this is recreating net new stuff, right? Editing stuff is worlds more complicated, right?
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, depending on when you're listening to this episode, is that like the deploy to production feature is very new.
Yeah.
Right. And it's half baked at the moment. But
and I think this is where I jump in and say, listen, we're talking about a public beta. It is a beta version. So when Chad and Max say it's half baked or it's the worst it'll ever be, it's because it's a beta that once it goes live, I'm sure a lot of the things that we're talking about, maybe the product team will actually like tune in and check out this episode. But a lot of things that we're talking about might actually just be in the actual new Sandboxes once they deploy the live version, because smart humans like Chad, Max, and others out there, maybe even listening to this podcast, are like leveraging it, using it. Second thing I want to throw out there is it is right now for anybody who signs up for the beta, but then also it's enterprise customer platform, content enterprise, marketing enterprise, ops enterprise, sales enterprise, or service enterprise. If you have any of those enterprises, you can turn on the Sandbox feature that we're talking about. Here's a question that I'm going to ask. And again, kind of going off the rails for a second, but when you guys talk about this deploy wizard, if it got smarter, because it might not be now, but let me ask you a question because my brain went there. Are we entering a world where if you have an enterprise set up in HubSpot and you've got a Sandbox where marketing and people should actually maybe even be working? Like, for instance, if I was going to create an email, do I create the email in the Sandbox and then deploy it to the real one and then send it from there? Or is that overkill? Like you were talking more like nerdy stuff.
Yeah, complete overkill. Okay. I mean, because like that's the thing. You shouldn't be afraid to build stuff in your main portal. It's more so, I would say, untested, fundamental structural changes to the way your portal operates. You should test drive it in the Sandbox first, right? You don't want to be spinning up a Sandbox to go build an email just to push it into the main portal, right? Like you can still draft. Like that doesn't, to me, necessitate
preview send and all that. Yeah, you have all the functions with that. If you were like, I mean, if you really needed to do something like, you know, one of the things they push back is lists, right? And so if you had like property structure changes that you need to make your data clean, it may be worth attempting to build all of the lists that would let you segment all of your customers after all of those net new properties were changed or something along those lines, so that you could really understand your segmentation. And unfortunately, reports don't push back, but that would be a nice thing too, is like, you know, now you can make your reports and it all works and your lists validate everything. Then you can push that all back up to production. Now, at least you can push the lists and the, you know, stuff like that, the lists and the property changes. I'm thinking at some point there may be a world where they need like it's almost like a code merge editor, or like where when you're viewing changes in code and there's like the green and the red that shows you like, oh, these lines were added, these lines were removed in this place. You know, it's not quite that nerdy, but like they will probably need something like that when they allow edits for conflicts pushing back up, like, hey, these properties already exist. Do you want, you know, obviously you change this, but between the last time we saw it and now this was edited and this was edited, do you want the copy that's in production or that's in Sandbox, right? They're going to need like some level of conflict changes where it scans both sides, runs through a checklist of however many things that it wants to confirm. And you know, I'm sure they'll let you just say choose all or whatever if you wanted, but that could be dangerous. But, you know, again, I think there's a world where that's going to need to happen to allow non-net new and an edit of existing assets.
So let me ask one more question, because my brain is going all kinds of like sideways, left, up, down over here. And then Liz, I promise I'll shut up and you can continue to herd cats the rest of the way through the show that we need to. I'm just
I'm just giving HubSpot. Space for nerds to be nerds. Nerd away.
I'm just getting started with HubSpot. I fire up a Sandbox. Do I go in and actually go to data management and go to data model? And do I build my data model in the Sandbox? And then once I'm happy with it in the Sandbox, then deploy it to the, again, I'm trying to figure out these scenarios. Where is that overkill?
Like if you're just, if you're brand new HubSpot, empty HubSpot.
Yeah. It's build and prod.
Build and prod, because you're not affecting anybody. And you don't have your whole list of contacts, or, you know, you haven't uploaded all of your data in there. The only time I might suggest that is if you're planning on doing like a mega upload or something like that. Maybe what I might do is build what I think is the right data structure in Sandbox, push that data structure up to prod, do a mega import inside of my sandbox and make sure everything checks out. Otherwise, then I have the opportunity to nuke the sandbox and pull that copy back from prod into Sandbox. But again, remember that you only have those 5 assets to work with right now.
Yeah. Also, like, I don't think anyone should, overthink this. Like, you can test stuff in prod. Like, that's not not an issue. You know what I mean? It's just like, it depends on the size of its impact. You know what I mean? And like how detrimental it could be if it goes bad, right? Like, don't be afraid to like experiment in production. Like, there are plenty of ways to, like, when you're building a workflow, there's plenty of ways to isolate the workflow so it doesn't touch your other data. Like when you're, so it's one of those things where it's like, unless it's a really, really big project, it probably doesn't need a sandbox. Yeah. Right. So, because again, it's like a process to spin it up, get all the stuff imported, maybe delete it. You know what I mean? It's a thing, right? It's not a
another thing too is like when you do a sandbox, all the workflows that you have are turned off after the sandbox is created. So like whatever you built in prod, you basically have to go. I think it also, I don't know if the new sandboxes import your user interface, but the old one definitely didn't. Right. Like
the record
structure. Yeah.
Oh, geez. That would make me not even use it. That's crazy.
Yeah. The old one definitely didn't. I haven't checked the new one. Actually, I don't even remember. Cause it's been like a little bit since I created I went in and did a whole bunch of stuff in there and pushed it up for an integration that I was building. But it was missing some stuff still, unfortunately. So I used another tool to import my record structure and a couple other things.
Love it.
And So, but I think that's one of those things that's a little tricky, right? Is making that decision. But what you asked earlier, George, like, do I build it in Sandbox? Actually, I'm going to change my answer to like brand new portal, probably never in Sandbox. And the reason is because of the limited assets. Now, in the future, if it is like a full, forward reverse kind of a thing, then you could do either way. It depends on what you really prefer, right?
Still just extra work though, you know what I mean? Like if
it's
nothing going on in production, then
if there's nothing in production, but I think the thing about it is like when it comes to like an actual development lifecycle and actually building things like from the perspective of like if you were doing it from like a development perspective, you'd always start in dev no matter what. You always start in dev. If you're developing something, you always start in dev, right?
True. I just think, like for us to get to that place, like it's obviously this Sandbox is a long way to go in terms of what it can push to production.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
So you end up rebuilding shit manually,
If we're at a place where you're not having to rebuild anything manually and you have the ability to do like reverts, almost like, you work in your Git repo, right? Like, I'm going to go back to this check-in and then Sandbox is back to whatever I built 5 check-ins ago, and then I can push that all back up, or whatever, right? Like those sort of things I think are theoretically possible. But it is going to increase the complexity as well to allow that level of functionality, right? Right now it is very turnkey. It's like, if these things work for you, you click a button and she works, right?
Chad, you think they'll ever bring it down to Pro?
I could see it. I mean, a lot of things that, like, for example, custom data sets were enterprise. Now you get a cut down version, right? But they're Pro now. You can make custom data sets with custom calculated properties in Pro. You have less properties you can make, but like in a pinch, it will allow you to make a report that you absolutely never could have made in HubSpot before.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys
it's
this.
Totally possible.
We've talked a lot about really interesting updates here, but is there anything that's still missing for us? Anything we still want to see? Chad, I see that smile.
Yeah, always. I mean, definitely version control will be one thing for sure. So that's huge. We were just talking about that. And then additional assets, like you're going to ultimately like at Max. I mean, you mentioned the edit, right? It's only net new properties. So if you need to edit the description of a property, for example, you're going in and doing a mega overhaul, and you just are taking your time in Sandbox and maybe deleting properties that don't need to exist anymore, adding descriptions to properties that somebody just junked up and didn't put names in, but you can't push those changes right now up to production, right? So I think that'd be really killer. You know, so both delete and edit would be amazing to have, even just on the property schema level.
Yeah. And I think also just like record layout stuff is a really big one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, record layout stuff is one of the biggest reasons, like, I feel like sandboxes would be useful, right? Just because, you know, you have to do, it's a lot of work to go in and completely like restructure like your UI and your record layouts and all that kind of stuff. And like, it's also something that can like stop people dead in their tracks from working because they like can't find where a piece of data went, or they don't know how to navigate the tabs on a certain record, or where to find the data they need, stuff like that. Right. So I think like moving to support that as fast as possible is probably a really important thing. You know, so that, and also like, I wonder if there's like anything creative they can do around how to handle like connected integrations. You know what I mean? Like when you do a, you know, developer portal, like you don't have any of your integrations still hooked up. Or not a developer portal, a sandbox, right?
Yeah.
So like you got to go like reinstall apps, reconnect stuff. Like sometimes that's not so easy with like, you know, like, you know, for when we have customers that want to do, you know, an event happily sandbox, we effectively have to give them like another license for free to go do that. Right. Which is like kind of goofy. You know, and so and I'm not sure like what the answer is to that, because like the developers and how their apps works is always going to be like a variable there. Right. Maybe it's, you just find
they
the way
have to
it
give
is,
a framework on the app partner side for Sandbox. They have to actually have a supported, you know, prod test branch where all your URLs change and all of your database changes, because you can't just connect up somebody's prod data. So that also means that whatever that partner is has to have a level of Sandbox functionality for their tool in the first place.
Interesting. Yeah. It's almost like my brain goes to, my simple mind goes to like in the future, if it was just almost a mirrored version, like, and it automatically kept up to date, but then you could like make changes and push it over. And then like, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately that's where they're moving. Right. But I'm sure there's, you know, drawbacks with doing like a complete mirror also, you know, like there's, I think sometimes there's a benefit to having it be a snapshot, just in that, like, it's not going to start changing while other people are making changes in production. You know what I mean? And like screwing up what you're doing in Sandbox. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So I did double check, the new version of the Sandbox does not pull in the UI structure. So it still has the default HubSpot About This Deal card. I can think the reason is because if you have integrated apps and they're not there or something, I mean, maybe they just omit those, but if those possibly could cause some sort of issue, or if you've installed, like a UI extension. So you made a custom HubSpot UI extension and it's in prod, but it's not connected to your Sandbox, obviously, because that doesn't have like splitting. I could expect that the card library that we now use for the record editors, right? You know, you have like the side panel that comes up when you're editing the structure. Those card editors would have properties in them that wouldn't be able to exist in the Sandbox theoretically, or stuff that could theoretically not exist. So right now they're just completely omitting it rather than like parsing out the stuff that's missing or putting placeholders in, you know, or something that will allow them to still exist, you know, or some way that it says this is in production, but it can't be in Sandbox. So you can still have everything. Because here's the thing is like when you build something in Sandbox and you add a record editor like that, or a property card or some sort of structure for the user interface of Sandbox, then you have to manually recreate it in production, you also have the possible missing out of making it exactly the same or some sort of conditional logic that you forgot to add. So I think a big piece would be adding that data in. And then the last thing, while we were talking about the developer sandbox in the enterprise accounts, one thing I wanted to point out that's really, 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 really helpful for your developers outside of just them spooling up a free dev account is the fact that it has your HubSpot structure. So if they're building a HubSpot user interface extension, then they already are going to see all of like your HubSpot portal properties and associations and association type IDs if you have custom objects. And often like you want to interact with a custom object when you end up dealing with the user interface extension. So that's like one reason that it's extremely helpful for your developer to work out of your enterprise developer sandbox rather than just the freebie developer sandbox. Also, they'll be constrained to the limits of whatever your subscription is. So if they want to use some sort of fancy technique, but it's a hub you don't pay for some reason, they'll have to live within that world as well. So a few couple extra things as we round the corner here.
Yeah, well, let's round the corner and land this plane, shall we? George, what is between 1 and 23 things you want our listeners to take away from today's episode? Just one?
No, just one thing. One thing. There was a word. I think it was Max used this word. I'm almost positive, and maybe it was used by multiple people, but the word is impact. And so my one takeaway is like when you're thinking about Sandbox and if you should use a Sandbox or not use a Sandbox or do something in Sandbox if you're using Sandbox is impact. And I would suggest that maybe you come up with like a, small, medium or large gauge around impact to the team, let's just say impact to the people, impact to the platform, or impact to the process. Right. So think about those 3 layers, the word impact and small, medium, or large to know where you should be building or doing the thing that you're doing moving forward. That's it. One thing. Okay, Hub Heroes, we've reached the end of another episode. Will Lord Lack continue to loom over the community, or will we be able to defeat him in the next episode of the Hub Heroes Podcast? Make sure you tune in and find out in the next episode. Make sure you head over to thehubheroes.com to get the latest episodes and become part of the League of Heroes. FYI, if you're part of the League of Heroes, you'll get the show notes right in your inbox, and they come with some hidden power-up potential as well. Make sure you share this podcast with a friend, leave a review if you like what you're listening to, and use the hashtag HubHeroes Podcast on any of the socials and let us know what strategy conversation you'd like to listen into next. Until next time, when we meet and combine our forces, remember to be a happy, helpful, humble human, and of course, always be looking for a way to be someone's hero.